Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 19th Trips and Traps. I'm Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
4 races to bring you this week. We'll start off by taking a look at race 6 from April 11th, the New York-bred maiden special weight for fillies and mares going 6 furlongs.
Yeah, a lot of things happen in this race sort of early and later in the race, and we want to focus really on two things. We're going to start out by talking about the horse who goes to the lead, and that is the horse on the outside and the eventual second-place finisher, Bandini's Diamond. But we also want to talk about the third-place finisher, Typhoon Terry, a horse who had a sort of well-publicized tough trip and probably should have won this race. I think that Bandini's Diamond still ran the better race, and Typhoon Terry strikes me as every wise guy's trip horse next time out, and a horse I'm going to want to play against.
I can see your point there. I mean, you got to take into context the way the race unfolds and the way the finish plays out here, and we'll see the 9 Bandini's Diamond, who's now up on the front end and coming up to challenge on the outside. That's the number 6 Crescent Shore. Pace is going to be pretty legit in here, and the race is going to fall apart a little bit, which will play into the favor of Typhoon Terry.
Exactly the way I feel about it. And when you think where the winner came from, because the winner and Typhoon Terry both came from absolutely back, the winner's just sticking his nose in the picture all the way in the pink. Bandini's Diamond is battling on the inside and front. Here is Typhoon Terry, and here. Now, Typhoon Terry, I think, Rosie Dubrovnik obviously had a very good first main week here riding, and she's done well and had live mounts, but it's going to be a learning process for her riding around here. Most of her time is spent in the inner. She overcommits to me, Eric, on the rail. When she angles out for room, she ends up getting very unlucky and totally squeezed out at this point.
And she has to alter course a couple of times and then has to go back toward the inside here. And you'll see her get back on the screen here with Typhoon Terry and then make a decent late run. But, you know, at this point, as we said, with the winner of the race, 7 horse came from about the same position that Typhoon Terry did. So the race definitely fell apart a little bit, and that should have helped Typhoon Terry there.
I agree with that. Now, here's the 9, Bandini's Diamond. And I want you to show, after the break, Cornelio Velasquez will angle this horse to the inside, but in my opinion, a mild stumble to start. He's cutting some horses off. I mean, he makes it tight on these horses inside of him. He continues to come over, continues to tighten up those other horses on the inside. And we're going to show another race that was completely affected by the break. And I know we don't have inquiries to start, but you do sometimes wish that we would take a look at what goes on at the break, because I think sometimes breaks badly affect races. Now, here is Typhoon Terry as we head into the stretch, and you're going to see Rosie Dubrovnik on the rail. She looks to angle out, and you're going to see these horses come over and impede her progress.
It seems like she has a little bit of a seam there, but things are going to tighten up, and she's going to have to go back to the inside. As a horse to the inside came out, and in a little bit she'll find that seam in about the 2-path finally and make a decent late run. But as we said, the horse that ran the best in this race probably was Bandini's Diamond, considering the pace scenario. Not sure really who I want out of this race, though. I get the feeling that there's probably going to be someone better than Bandini's Diamond next time out she runs too.
I agree with all of that. I would move Bandini's Diamond up. I know it's horse to finish second, but I still think he ran well, or she did. But I agree with you. I'm not sure who I want out of this race. Typhoon Terry, she should have won this day. It's the first time starter for Dominic Lucio, took a lot of money. The problem is she should have won this day. Next time it may be tougher, and she could well be a trap.
Move on to our second race. We'll get onto the turf here. This is a 3 coins up overnight stakes for 4-year-olds and up, going a mile and a 16th. The 3 Pocket Cowboys first start back in 2012.
You're not going to see much happen as Eric and I talk over this race, as you can let the horses break here. But what really happens, it all happens at the start. Pocket Cowboys is a horse that has some speed and easy to see in the pink, and he'll be riding up sort of inside the pocket trip. The problem is, when he breaks a little bit slowly, instead of reacting to that and thinking, what do I have to do, I feel like the rider just sort of tucked him in there and didn't move aggressively towards the lead, and he ends up in that seemingly good pocket trip, but he also ends up getting blocked the entire time down the stretch.
Yeah, that definitely to me looked like somewhat of a, give him a race on the race back, when it's all said and done here. But settles in that good spot right here, as you said. But when you sit in this spot and the pace slows down and you don't have horses in front of you quitting, or you do even have horses in front of you quitting, you're just in a spot where you're not going to get a comfortable straight run.
Yeah, what it is when horses get put in the spots, as you saw in the race before this, and you see here, is you can become a victim. It may work out for you, but you also raise the probability and possibility of you being victimized by events that are not your fault. And the best trip in a situation, listen, the start is the most important part of races, and we've seen it in both of these races, and they will dictate where horses' position are and position horses don't get. The problem is, by not reacting to the slow break, you just sort of give yourself no options after that, Eric.
Yeah, the favorite and the eventual winner, Mahubo, is coming up on the outside there, making a 3-wide run, so just a little bit off the pace, but in the outside and in the clear, so the rider, Rosie Napravnik, in this case, could dictate whenever, she wants to push the button on Mahubo.
Yeah, and you'll see that Pocket Cowboys at this point, well, what's he doing? And unfortunately, the entire race is developing in front. He'd like to get in that scene, but he effectively gets bind switched by Indecent, who ends up running, I believe, a good second in this race. And even now, he can't get in the clear. He's still inside of Indecent. And now as Indecent sort of clears off, you can see that Raj has some horse, but he can't even really ride him that well. Now he gets him out. And one of the things we talk about with the difference between saving ground and wide or unencumbered trips, and people get overly concerned with saving ground, is saving ground gets you in trouble. The horses are intimidated. If you have an unencumbered trip on the outside, you may lose some ground, but you're not necessarily going to get caught in a jackpot.
Certainly the case in Pocket Cowboy is a horse that I think will move forward second time out.
He will. He's an accomplished horse. He probably moves in with New York State breds, and I think he showed in that race he can still run pretty well, and he will be tough when he runs next time out.
We'll check out another turf race now. This is the 9th from Friday the 13th. It's a New York bred maiden special weight for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile and 16th.
We're going to focus on 2 horses in here. One of them gets stayed along early. That's the 6, Hidden Vow. The other one will be the 8, Frisky Cat, who ends up running 5th. Now, if we stop, they're pretty easy horses to see because Hidden Vow, who's rolling, is in yellow. Now, he is going to be in a lot of trouble early. Frisky Cat seemingly is going to be able to settle in the back of the pack into a comfortable spot here, but for whatever reason, the rider didn't want to do that and sent him up 5 wide into the first turn, which negated any chance he may have had.
Very curious move by Frisky Cat, and you see the 6-horse in here getting getting head thrown about and everything,
Mauled.
and just nowhere to go early on in the stage of this race. But does manage to settle after here, and now we see the 8 Frisky Cat get on the screen, and where is he going?
Yeah, I didn't understand this move when I saw the race, and I don't understand it anymore now. As it turned out, the race was dominated by horses in the first 4 slots, so he may not have had any chance being way back there. But regardless of that, he had absolutely no chance once he made this aggressive, preposterous 5-wide sweeping move into the first turn, rushing wide. They just don't win turf races this way, especially in these situations. Frisky Cat is back entered Saturday. The problem is part of an entry, as this Frisky Cat's on the outside. Hidden Vow's back there. I didn't think Hidden Vow any running. Frisky Cat's part of an entry where the entry mate's going to get bet, so there's no value paying this horse in the future. But I think he's a lot better than he showed in this race, Eric.
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned earlier in this race that the top 4 finishers pretty much stayed that way. Around the track, a little mixing up of positions here, and Frisky Cat, despite that early premature wide move, does manage to hold on to the 5th spot in here, right behind these 4 horses that were up on the lead the whole way. Actually, Frisky Cat's going to go up and take the 4th spot now, but it's just a good solid race for Frisky Cat, who stayed on after having that eventful early run.
I agree. He's wide every step of the way. He's being ridden aggressively pretty much every step of the way. Hidden Vow, I thought, got into a comfortable spot after the early trouble, as Eddie Castro did a good job of settling him down. I thought ultimately he had no run. Now, the one thing I think you can say about this race is you have to look at it from a dynamic standpoint. The dynamics are that horse that was on the lead won the race, horse who was speed with him finished 4th at a big price, 37-1, and the horses that stalked the 2 of them finished 2nd and 3rd. So no closers got into it. Now, it's also entirely possible that none of the closers had the ability to get into it. But if you want to try to make an excuse for a horse that was towards the back of the pack, a horse like Hidden Vow, you could possibly use dynamics if you're somebody who wants to give him another chance. I don't, but maybe you disagree.
Yeah, I don't think I want to give him another chance either. I actually picked him in this race here, and despite the pace scenario and despite how everything played out, the early trouble that he had in the race, just didn't think there was that much there, in terms of run in the stretch. And it's a horse that had run twice a couple times in the dirt first time out, so it just seems like a horse that they're just not sure where he fits and where he belongs and how good he is.
He's a cheaper horse. I think they'd had the right idea when they ran in a maiden claiming race the first time out. Frisky Cat, on the other hand, did make those moves in the race, and I think he is a much better horse than this finish suggests.
All right, let's get on to our last race of this episode of Trips and Traps. We're going to Sunday's 8th race featuring Saginaw, who breaks from the outside here as the big favorite. Yeah,
you want to watch the 3 outside horses because the first thing is when races start, you have an idea of how they're going to be run. And one thing you knew is the gray in those Rapoli silks, the orange hat, over communication, figured to be the speed. He ends up back in last early, so you have to say to yourself, well, what the heck happened here? And that's why you have to watch head-ons of starts, and we'll show the head-on afterwards, because over-communication was totally interfered with by the eventual winner of this race, Saginaw, who cut him off and in turn cut off the third-place finisher, Golden Gulch. Had he not done that at the start and given himself this ridiculous advantage, he would have been dealing with over-communication early, and Golden Gulch wouldn't have to rush up to get that position, and he would have had a better pace to run into, and it's very possible he would have beaten Saginaw. Saginaw got a huge unfair advantage.
Yeah, I mean, the race totally changed after the start. And, you could even say that, it seemed to me like the rider with the 4-gallon fields was, expecting someone else to be on the lead. So, when he broke on top and there was no one out there, he didn't really want to commit. Maybe he was just hoping to get a tracking trip in there, so he waits for someone to clear off, and, it ends up to be the favorite, Saginaw, who wins by a length and a half in the end in here. But the whole beginning of the race changed it for not only the winner, not only over communication, but for everyone else, too.
Yeah, it completely changed the dynamics of the race, and I think that's another thing we talked about earlier. Looking at the starts of a race, I understand they don't disqualify horses coming to the game. We're not even discussing disqualifications, but you don't need to have situations where riders are able to get advantages by cutting off other horses, to be perfectly honest. Listen, they're in the business to try to win. For their owners, for the bettors, I get all that. But this is a situation where this is a horse that got a clear unfair advantage, and you're going to see, as we show you the head-on, the rider is going to be looking over his shoulder as he comes in. And particularly keep your eye on Saginaw, because Saginaw is going to stumble mildly at the start. But he comes right in, he cuts off over-communication, the rider's looking over his shoulder as the 5 gets cut off as well. The entire dynamic of the race changed, and it was all because of what happened at the start. And also, this is just a lesson in general of watching races and watching the head-ons of races and watching the head-ons of starts, because so much can happen at the starts to change the race.
It really is important to watch head-ons, because you just, everyone sees the pan shot, and you just pick up on stuff, and, even if it wasn't, so much a horse stumbling, you just pick up on different stuff. Horses being green, horses lugging out, horses getting in. There's just different things you can tell from watching a head-on than you can from a pan.
Watching the head-on is like watching a 3-dimensional shot, and watching the pan is almost like watching in 2 dimensions. Anyway, we can always use your help. This is the last episode from Aqueduct. We'll be at Belmont Park, of course, starting Friday the 27th of April, but it's trips and traps at NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching.